Hey, what's up? We're in weird territory right now. I'm making 2 videos in 2 days. I don't know. Let's just do the intro thing. So if you have probably heard, the Canon R5 is the new latest and greatest from Canon. And today I'm gonna talk to you about how you can supercharge the autofocus in this camera to get way more out of it than you might be already. As you know, this camera has eye autofocus, it has traditional autofocus points, it has all these crazy great modes, and in my experience using it on assignment so far, it is amazing. The autofocus in this camera is super impressive. But for me, I made a few tweaks to the settings, and I'm gonna show you what those tweaks were and how I'm getting even more speed and more power out of the autofocus in this camera. There's a lot more stuff that goes on once you're out there in the field making work, and these are the kind of changes I make to the camera settings whenever I get a brand new Canon camera. I changed settings on my 1DXs, my old 5Ds, and now the R5. I figured out the best settings that I can find for when you're working quickly or working on assignment or working on maybe an event or something like that, and get the most and the best out of the old school and the new school as you use this camera in the field. So to start, what are we gonna do today? Well, normally when most people pick up a camera, they use this button right here to autofocus, to take the picture, to do everything. And you're relying on a lot to go out of that one little button. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the autofocus off of that button and we're gonna flip it around to the back of the camera. We're gonna flip it around to the back of the camera and we're gonna put it right here on the AF on button. And then we're also gonna do some other little tricks here to make it more powerful than just that. So first step, hop over into those orange menus all the way at the right side. You're gonna look for the customize buttons menu. So once we get to that customize buttons menu, the first thing we're gonna do is that first item down, that shutter button, we're gonna change that from the AF selection all the way to the left, and we're gonna move it all the way to the right over to the AE lock. And so what that's gonna do is when you hold that button halfway down, instead of taking a picture, auto-focusing, all those things, when you hold it halfway down, all it's gonna do is just lock your exposure. Now if you want, you can change it over to metering start, but that seems like a really clumsy way to do it. I like to use it on the AE lock, so then I know, push it down halfway, that's locking in my exposure if I'm using one of those automatic exposure modes like aperture priority, shutter priority, all those things. But when you push the shutter all the way down, it's still gonna take a picture. Everything else is the same, it's just the half press that we're changing. Now if we hop back out to the customized dial menu, customized button menu rather, the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna double check that down at that AF on menu is set to metering and AF start. It is by default, so it should be good, but basically now, when you press this AF on button on the back of the camera, you are gonna be autofocusing. I'm gonna press this button on the back of the camera, and that's gonna activate the camera's autofocus instead of the shutter button. So now what I've done is detached my taking pictures from my focusing the camera. And what that allows you to do is you can now enable a more controlled method of when you want to take the picture versus when you want to autofocus. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to hop over into the purple menus, the autofocus menus, all the way over to the left. And right there in the first thing, AF operation, we're going to change that to Servo Af. Now you can leave it in one shot. If you're that kind of person and you want to be one shot all the time, then sure, go ahead and do it. But I'm gonna tell you this. If you switch to servo, now since these buttons are separate, the AF on button and the shutter button, you're now going to enable basically the best of both worlds. When you have the autofocus on button held down, you get servo. You're gonna be able to focus continuously all the time, wherever your point is selected. And when you hit that front shutter button, it's gonna take the picture. So you can keep holding it down. I can just keep tracking on objects, tracking on everything. And this is something I've done for years with all of my cameras. But you still get the best of the other world, because if you want to take a picture of something that's not moving, we'll just hit the autofocus on button and let go of it. And you've effectively got one shot. Now there are some small advantages to one shot. I'm sure some nitpicker out there is gonna hit me in the comments, but you know, most of the time, it's totally great. If you're gonna do studio still life stuff, maybe put it back into one shot just to be safe. But anything else, literally anything else, this is the way to go. So after we've changed that, I would say picking an AF method like the box or the box with the points around it, stuff like that, that's gonna be a good way to have this set up, and that's gonna only pertain to the AF on button. Now you might be saying at this point, wait a second, I just bought a camera that has eye tracking autofocus. Why in the heck am I going to use this old school way of autofocusing that I don't have to use anymore? I got eye tracking. Well, number one, sometimes you take pictures of stuff that don't have a face visible. So, you know, for a lot of the stuff that involves events and things like that, or maybe the face isn't looking at you, stuff like that, concerts, maybe you want to get a picture of the guitar, you know, picture of the microphone instead of all this other stuff. For me, sports, you know, footballs, you know, they're wearing helmets. You can't take a picture of their face tracking. Is not going to work with a helmet on. There's reasons to hop off that face auto tracking. And I'm gonna give you the best of both worlds, so don't worry, we're gonna get there. So after you got this swapped over to Servo Af, I turned continuous AF off. That's also in this AF menu. And basically what that setting does is it just keeps focusing all the time. So the camera, no matter where you point it, will just be focusing at all times. I'm sure it'll smoke the battery for one, but also it's really confusing and it totally voids everything we're doing here. So you wanna turn that off too. As far as that menu 3, this is another place where a lot of people get hung up on the AF menu. It doesn't really pertain to what we're doing today, but I just want to give you my 2 cents. I kind of use mode 1 or mode 4, but everyone I've ever met that uses Canon cameras kind of finds that all of them have their place. But for me, mode 1 and mode 4 are the 2 I kind of hop between the most. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, pick whatever one you want. So now we're going to go back into that customize buttons menu. And we're going to scroll down past the AF on button to the star button. Now for those of you who aren't familiar with all of these buttons, so as you can see, we've got the quick select dial, we got the AF on button, and we got the star button. That's the little asterisk over there, right? So these are the buttons we're changing. So we got the AF on button set to our traditional autofocus system. You can use this quick dial to move that point all over, just like you've done with any Canon DSLR for years. But now, if we go to the Customize Button menu, and we head to this asterisk button, we can change it, instead of being AE Lock, over to Eye Autofocus. So now, with just the touch of a button, I got AF on, I can just use this point, right? And that's all that's doing. Or I can hit this button, and all of a sudden it goes into face tracking. And as you can see, even with me trying to Hail Mary this, now it's tracking my face all around the picture, right? And if I want to go back to the point, I go back to the point, and I just focus wherever I want. So we have effectively enabled 2 autofocus modes that are completely different. You can change the autofocus on the AF on button to be whatever you want. Just use all your typical autofocus settings. And then in a literal instant, you just hit that asterisk or that star button. And now you got eye autofocus tracking. And you're gonna get all the advantages of all this brand new technology, but you're still gonna keep your traditional autofocus for when you want to take pictures of objects, buildings, or you just want to override that eye auto tracking system and just use an old school method. I do change a few other settings here. I changed this quick dial to be like a quick select. I'll show that on the screen quick. Man, this just makes this camera super powered. I used this on assignment the other day. So if you aren't already, follow me on Instagram where I've been posting some work I've been making with this camera. I did a New York Times assignment with it like just a few days after I got it, and it performed amazingly. And I used these autofocus settings so I could get the most out of it. And it was nice to be able to switch between, you know, I take a picture of food and I use the box, and then I do a portrait, or I'm getting pictures of, you know, people cooking and stuff, and I can use that eye autofocus tracking, and I can go back and forth between the two super easy. Oh, it made my life very easy. And then you get back to the computer and you got these beautiful 45 megapixel files that are just incredible. I'm just so stoked on this little camera, and I really hope this tip helps you. And if it did, give a like, subscribe. Maybe I'll do more of this stuff. This is the first time I think ever I've done 2 videos in 1 week. And I even remember to look at the camera, because my one from yesterday, I looked at my stupid monitor, so I'm doing this the whole time. Thanks for following. Thanks for liking, and give that subscribe so I can move out and buy a house in the mountains and make that YouTube money. I'm kidding, but have a good weekend, everybody. See ya.